Right. I guess we could give it one more minute, see if anyone else has done us. Although thank you very much already to everyone who's here on a Sunday morning.
Woo! Us!
You the man, Tom. Okay, right, well, good morning. My name's Hugh David. For those of you who don't know me, I've been around the business of anime for about 13 years, and before that I was a fan for, crikey, almost as long, if not more. And the last couple of cons people have been asking me to tell stories, basically, which is kind of weird because most people who've been at cons have heard some of them over the years, or bugged me in the bar and I've told them things and then said, oh, don't tell anyone afterwards. That was when I was getting paid by various companies. But now I'm effectively an independent consultant, so I figured, what the hell, right? There was a guy a couple of years ago who started doing a tell-all lecture at the American cons about the death of ADV films, and I thought, fine, well, if they're not going to sue him for it, I could probably get away with a few things. But then I thought, actually, with all the cons I'm still coming through and all the people I still meet and the online world, I figured, actually, why don't I make it something a bit more useful than just a ton of gossip. So, yes, there will be some gossip for those who want it, and I know that's what most of you are here for. But I've tried to build something a little bit more practical out of out of an hour's worth of being an insider inside the anime business. For those of you who don't understand the space reference joke here, the whole point is that ADV Films, as an anime company, was based out of Houston. And it predates Funimation, and one of the things, because there's not yet a really good history of anime, it has been said by other commentators better than me that when the history of anime is written, as in terms of the history of anime in the West, ADV Films will deserve more than just one chapter. Because of so many things we're used to now in Western anime, ADV were at the heart of why those things happen. So anyway, we used to say this in the office. This was the same, because we were in London and they were in Houston, and it just felt logical. Every time something went wrong, you had to pick up the phone. You'd say, okay, Houston, we have a problem. So there you go, classic old joke, that's for us. So anyone who doesn't know me, this is what makes me an insider, so to speak. I mean, it's not it sounds a bit hipstery to say it, but there is a good reason. I joined ADV International, which was the overseas label for ADV Films, in March 2003 as a marketing production coordinator. I worked for them until they closed in March 2008. I then ran a legacy version of ADV Films for a British company called Lace Digital Media Sales, who are still around for many years, were the biggest independent sales firm in Britain for DVD. I did that for a year. After that, I stayed in the DVD business for a while. I did a few other things, pardon the spelling, and consultant. So I've worked for a few other companies. Any of you who are into film and television may recognize names like Tartan, Network, who are the kings of cult British television, including things like, they've just announced HDV master of Jerry Addison's UFO. They're that sort of people. And for the last few years, I've been editing an online magazine called TV Times and coming back into teaching. So I have 7 years under my belt in anime distribution for the UK and Germany. And I've been lecturing and writing about anime for about 12 years now. I still write reviews for MYM, and you'll still read a lot of my stuff on the Anime Limited and Funimation blogs. So, confession number one, how did I get into this business? Because this is the thing I've been asked probably the most over all the years, is how do you get into the anime business, particularly if you're in England? And there is no one way to break into the business. You don't need to love anime, but it helps. Basically, the thing that even now people forget is it is an industry. It's not just, despite everything Jeremy said last night, and he's right, Anime Limited is an office full of fans, but they all have certain skills that you need to run a company. And the industry is exactly that. You have marketing departments, PR, production, design, accounts. Oh my God, the accountants are the unsung heroes of the anime industry, and not just because of the things they hide. So those of you who are in accounting, seriously, it's a really great way to get into the film business. There's not enough good accountants there, and the ones who get into it are often shocked because they realise that companies are being run in all sorts of strange ways, particularly by people who think they have a lot more money to spend than they actually do. And so it becomes, you can be the most powerful position. You can be the person who says to the licensor when they're saying, I want to buy this show, and you can go, only if it makes us this much money over the next 3 quarters. And that's a good place to be, if you're interested in getting shows over from Japan. It's all about the money. The Japanese just want to know how much you're going to make them. You know how much you want to make, so it's a good role to get into. But everything else, as design. Design is amazing. I've worked with so many good designers over the years, and those covers aren't just a matter of taking the images that are approved from Japan and slapping it on a background with the logo and you're done. There's so much more that needs to go into it. And there's decisions to be made by market. When we started running ADV, we just took everything from the US. And when we finally got our own designer, we got him because we were in Germany as well, and we realised we needed to make covers different, because the other German labels had amazing covers. He had a very expansive brief, and quite often he would butt heads with the American department and say, I'm sorry, I'm not doing what you've done. And he would create his own version from the Japanese art, and then he would send it directly to the Japanese, and the committees would go, ooh, that's really nice. Yes, go ahead, do that. And so the next thing you know, we had our own more individualistic, more original covers. We actually opted frequently for more Japanese original material. Often what in America would be on the inside of a sleeve or be a bonus art would be our outside cover here. So the designer, great way in, really important. But the point being, there are places for skilled professionals to make a living, although you're making a lot less now than we used to make. And then to these days, it has to be said, wearing more than one hat is essential. If you are somebody who does marketing and accounts, you're far more likely to get employed in the business than somebody who only does just one thing. When I joined as a marketing and production coordinator, I didn't know the first thing about production, and to be fair, I didn't know a lot about marketing. But I had to wear both hats and then rapidly assumed 3 or 4 other roles along the way, including having to do sales. I had to learn to write enough code to be able to run the web shop. I think by the end of 2006, when I was ready to quit, I think I had 5 hats on, and I wasn't getting paid enough for even one of them. So, but that's the way small businesses run, and not just in anime. I'm going to reference it often, but for those of you who don't watch HBO's Silicon Valley, even though it's specifically about software developers, it is an absolutely brilliant textbook to what it's like to run small companies and startups. And a lot of the things that are extremely funny are horribly true. So that tends to be something I watch and I laugh at a lot, because I just remember us at AGV, and it's the perfect way. If you want to know what it's going to be like, watch that. As with any job, getting qualified at something is going to get you in rather than just being a fan of the content. It helps to be a fan, but you're far more likely to get hired if you're good at what you do. And I think that's really easy to forget when you love something. You need to be good at what you do. Confession number 2, the big shock for me walking into the business was, what do you mean the Japanese don't really give a hoot about what we do over here? Don't get me wrong, there are Japanese creators who desperately want to be seen in the West. They grow up on Western content, and it influences them too, and some of them will even try and come over and work here. And that's great, and that's wonderful. But as a rule, even now, and Jeremy didn't say this very often last night, but if you read between the lines with what he was saying about himself and Andrew, this is a big part of why Andrew Partridge spends most of his time in Japan, and it's not just eating Harvard does. He's out there convincing people it's a good idea to let him release their stuff here. And it's not a negative. This is just purely an example of the cultural divide. And those of you who've said and I've heard this from various fans over the last couple of years, more recent anime doesn't seem to be fitting your tastes. It's all very aimed at very small markets, and that's precisely because the people making it in Japan just want to make sure they get their money back, and it's easier to do that at home and not worry about who's going to buy it abroad. That said, the most extreme example for me, Makoto Shinkai, who is, let's face it, he is a bit of a genius. Anybody who spends that much time doing his own first film on a Mac at the office every night instead of actually having a life and then achieving something great with it deserves the recognition. But all his films afterwards are fantastic. When we brought him over here to the UK to be at the BFI, and he was having a Q&A, and one of the fans asked him, about how does he make stuff that makes us all feel the emotions that we do, and he said, well, actually, I don't really understand why any of you like what I do. It's so Japanese. How do you understand it? And the whole audience was like, okay, we're not quite sure how to take this. And he wasn't being mean, he just felt that he'd made something that was so intensely unique to him and his culture, his society, his country. He just didn't quite grasp why a bunch of foreigners sitting in a room with him really loved it. He was happy though, I mean, you know, he was. And it's only when you start talking to the creatives who spend more time over here that you realise there are some who want to make content that can be seen everywhere. And you know, Gonzo Digimation had a great run earlier this century, which, you know, ended not unlike ADV in a bit of a financial crash. But the reason they did things like Helsing and Last Exile, and then they went to work on Afro Samurai, and of course the music videos they facilitated with various Western rock groups, was not just because they wanted to expand what they did and make more money. It's because key personnel at Gonzo, one was English, another was a Japanese who'd become a football player in Poland. And when he finished his football career, he went back to Japan and didn't really know what to do, but he'd lived in Europe consistently and spoke several languages, and he ended up working in anime. And those two guys were the geniuses who kept telling the rest of the creators, because there were wonderful creators at Gonzo, and it was all about pushing digital animation, you know, from Full Metal Panic onwards. But they were the guys who kept looking at other things and saying, oh, what if we did this version? What if we did that? Would that sell in America? Would that sell in Germany? You know, they had the great global vision, and I do think a lot of their shows still hold up over 10 years later, now that we're getting them on Blu-ray, because they thought about the rest of the world. They understood that there was something uniquely Japanese to anime and to anime stories, but they also realised, actually, you know, we can make this work. I'll never forget sitting down in my boss's house in Houston on a holiday, a Christmas holiday, and it was then a boyfriend who became a husband, the head of the international division of Gonzo, the Englishman, sat down and said, all right guys, I want, and there was a marketing guy from the Houston office of ADV, he just sat us two down and he said, I'm going to show you something, don't tell anybody about it, I want you to see what you think. And he showed us the proof of concept for Afro Samurai, and we both just freaked the We just freaked out. We were like, oh my god, this is going to sell so much. Obviously it didn't in the end. But that said, it did make its money back, and it sold to the right people, because it's very easy to think that we are, those of us here or in the fan communities that talk a lot, it's easy to think that we are just the only people who like anime, but there's actually a surprising number of people you meet when you go to bigger cons and broader cons from other walks of life and other demographics, who got into anime through things like manga in the 90s, pushing their stuff. I mean, it's very easy to forget that manga was originally part of a record company that specialised in reggae and black music of various types, and they made sure, it was a conscious decision to use things like metal or to make sure that rap had an interest in anime. That was not done randomly. That was a conscious effort to bring in more markets and appeal to them. And over the years, I've met many people who would not go to an Amecon, but who would come to something like MCM and say to me, oh, I want to buy your product. Why don't you have more like this? And they were the sort of people that Afro Samurai was perfect for. And also in Japan, of course, they loved hip-hop. You know, you meet a lot of creators who are totally all about the hip-hop. So for them, it was a logical step to blend it all. But as I say, these are the exceptions, not the rule. Thankfully, I feel like we're coming back the other way again now. I feel like in the last year, I'm seeing more and more anime that can work on a really broad canvas. I think that's partly because of things like Netflix and digital streaming. I think that Netflix is going to change the game radically for creatives in Japan. They've already changed the game for J-drama with their first ever home-produced drama. They've done things that, according to my friends in Japan, nobody has ever seen in J-drama before. I suspect they're probably going to do the same thing with anime too, and that's because Netflix have a truly global vision. Confession number 3. People always say to me, can I be a voice actor? Can I work on something? You know, even now that I don't work in the business, people are like, how do I get into voice acting? You've got to understand, you've actually got to know how to act first. Which seems to be a bit of a surprise for some people when I say that. You know, there was an old phrase we used to have, I don't know if anyone says it anymore, which is a face for radio, which is basically an insult and says you're ugly, but you sound great. But what I mean by the use of that phrase here is the fact that if you know how to act in an audio environment, so you've done audio dramas, you've done voiceovers for adverts, you've done radio adverts, you've done anything that gets you to act with your voice, you have a better chance of getting into the business as a voice actor. And you think that seems pretty logical now. It's like, I want to be a voice actor, I better learn to voice act. But actually, in 13 years, the number of people said to me, how do I get in? And you go, what have you got? Show me, where's your tape? I was just going to stand here and make a voice for you. It doesn't work like that, guys, sorry. Many a fan has acted as if staying at home fan dubbing is all they need to do to be plucked from their British bedroom for the bright lights of big cities of America. Not that that refers to anyone specifically.
Really?
Sorry.
Really?
We're not going to mention that person. Yes. I mean, he's not here this year, is he?
Not as far as I know.
Oh, God. Good. If you know anything, though, about the history of how and why anime came to be dubbed in Texas, and that is an interesting subject matter, then you know why that approach doesn't work. The whole reason, and I have this from Matt Greenfield, the co-founder of ADV, I have it from him directly. The whole reason they started doing dubbing in Texas was because when he and John Learfield were buying anime from Japan and doing the subtitles themselves with the VHS tapes, they thought, you know what, we'll sell more of it if we dub it in English. We'll sell more then. And they're like, okay, so let's hire some dubbing people. So they went to LA, which was the centre of a lot of dubbing at the time, and they're like, oh God, we can't afford that. And so they went to the East Coast, and they're like, we can't afford those guys either. And they looked at each other and said, can we get anyone here? Then we don't have to fly, we don't have to pay anybody, we just get them here and use them. And one of them went, well, I know a couple of people who act in the local theatre. We can ask them. And they literally built their dubbing team out of the local acting scene in the local theatre. Partly because they're non-union, they didn't have to pay the union rates. Partly because most of those guys, Houston does not have a very famous world-class acting theatre scene. So they were mostly unemployed. So they're like, fine, we'll do it. But look what came from that. It's hard to think of anime these days dubbed in English, not with the sounds and the twangs of Texas, whether it's done in Dallas or Houston. There are shows that could have benefited from not having that. And we can all name our favourites. But the fact is, it got the business off the ground. It got things started. And those of you in the audience, and I know there's a few who specialise in dubs and sound acting, and those of you who just have long memories, there are some truly horrendous dubs from those early years. But they had to find their feet. And I think it says a lot. Literally this week, I've just watched all of Assassination Classroom Part 1, Season 1, because I have to review it for MYM. And I was flicking between the two voice tracks, and they're both great. Genuinely, I think they're both great. I know that's hard for purists to accept, but I do. And as Matt always said, if you say you're a purist, does that mean you watch it with the subtitles off and with the ad breaks, including the ads in between, at the time it's transmitted in Japan? And he says, if you're not doing that, you're not a purist. You're just saying you like subs more than dubs. And that's a fair point, I guess. But the reality is, I flip between the two. I don't speak Japanese, but I'm just listening for the sound of the acting and the entertainment and the rhythm. But the English dub matched it. It had its own dub jokes in. There's a couple of jokes that refer to other English dubs. It's got the meta humour. And it was just very well acted. And I thought, you know what? This is where we've got to. 20 years later, or 25 years later, this is where we've got to, where the Texas scene is so good that actually, it's on a par with other dubbing companies. So, it has to start somewhere, but so do you. If you want to get into that business, you've got to start somewhere, and it helps to learn how to do the thing you want to do. Right, censorship. This has been part of my life for as long as I can remember, because even as a teenager, I had the great advantage of after growing up for a few years in England, I lived in Botswana and in Switzerland. And one of the fun things about living in Geneva and Switzerland is you are at the centre, a crossroads of many cultures. And French TV was showing a megaton of anime on Wednesday afternoons when school was out, and on Saturdays. And so I'm part of what the French market call Génération Harlock. I'm the group of people who grew up watching Captain Harlock after school, and Mysterious Cities of Gold, and Shell Hound, and a whole bunch of other shows. And we watched it religiously, and then by the time movies started coming out in the cinema on VHS, we were ready for anime. And that is why those of you who go to France and see how popular anime is, and how new anime movies from Japan hit the actual cinema straight away, that's why. That market started 15, 20 years before the British one being developed, and by the time everyone was in their 30s, we were only just getting started here. But one of the things that meant is I saw things, I saw movies, I saw TV, I saw all sorts of things in cuts that were different from England, because the BBFC, of course, are often the bane of many an anime fan. have a long history of making what they think are suitable changes for the wider British audience. And so when I got into the industry myself, I was already very aware of censorship. I'm the sort of person who used to buy widescreen VHS. I used to import VHS from other countries. When DVD came along, I had my first player was multi-region straight away, Christmas '99. My first 2 discs were American. You know, that's the kind of guy I was. So it was just a thing I was interested in, you know. So when I actually got into the business, it was really useful because all of a sudden I'm on the phone to the BBC. I'm writing out forms. I'm learning the process. And, you know, but then we had to launch in Germany as well. And then I was like, okay, how are we going to do this? Because I don't know German. And they're like, no, that's fine, just, you know, all the Germans we'll meet will speak English. I'm like, how are we going to prove the dub? Well, we hired German-speaking people, which we did. So we would go over to Germany and we met with all the dubbing companies, and there's a long tradition in Germany of dubbing companies because they dub Western product, American product. It's the same in Japan. The Japanese dub, you know, Hollywood film. And so they've been doing it for years. They're experts. They know what they're doing. They can do fast, efficient. Well, they're German. But you know, they also, you know, they have humour, and it's one of those great fallacies. One of the great British racist fallacies is that the Germans aren't funny. And actually, if you actually know or any Germans or live there for any time, or you realise they are funny. It's just not always the same sense of humour as the rest of us. And so we said, let's do Azamanga Daioh in Germany. We have the license. Let's put out Azamanga Daioh. And it's like, you know what? Azamanga Daioh is hard enough as a high school comedy to do in English. You know, we had to figure out what accents to use in the American dub to convey the fact that certain characters are not from the same town and all that kind of thing. So we went over to Germany and we had lots of drinks and lots of dinners and the things that people in the media seem to do when you think they're not working, but actually it's all work because it all leads to negotiations in the end. And we had these amazing conversations with German dubbers. You know, there's one guy over there who was a former professor of media studies who decided that lecturing wasn't making enough money and he went into dubbing. And he became the head of a dubbing studio. And his obsession was British sitcoms. Loves British sitcoms. Desperately loves them. Always tries to get the job of dubbing them. Because he was convinced he could make them funny for the Germans. He keeps pointing out that historically, Germany and England have more in common with each other than France and England, for example. And so he would say, you know, we can make it work. And I was like, well, what about Azamanga Daioh? He says, oh, it's no problem. He says, I know what I can do with that. That's fine. His great example was Other Than 40 Towers, which apparently works very well in Germany, although Manuel can't be from Spain. He has to be from somewhere else. This is true. Seriously, he was saying, you do know that in Italy when it's dubbed, he's from this place. And it's funny how this changes. But he said, he and I had this long discussion about, funnily enough, Hello, Hello. And for anyone who knows, for those of you who don't know Hello, Hello, it was a long-running, very long-running sitcom on BBC in the 80s, set during World War II in occupied France. And it's all about a French restaurant owner who is caught between the Germans who want to eat at his restaurant and the resistance who want to use his restaurant as a cover. And he doesn't really want to do either. He just wants to shag every waitress who's around and ignore his wife. And the whole thing is in English. And for whatever reason, the creators decided that everybody should speak with exaggerated accents. So whether you find that racist or not now is up to you, but certainly growing up in the 80s watching it, you look at it and it's hard to take it seriously. And I said, are you really telling me that Germans want to see Hello, Hello? He says, are you kidding? He says, we managed to make it work in France, we managed to make it work in Italy. I was like, but there's an Italian character in there. You know, they sent in a fascist member of Mussolini's army to work with the Germans. You know, the big joke was that the Germans would all say, Heil Hitler, and one of them was not really pro-Hitler, and he'd go, Plump, right? And then when they brought in the Italian guy, they would all go, Heil Hitler, and he'd go, Heil Mussolini, like this. And that was supposed to be funny, and I was like, you're really going to make this work? And this guy said, everyone, he said, we made it work it was made to work in every country. He says, you just changed the nationalities. The Germans say German, that's fine. He says, so many of us in Germany didn't like the Nazis, that's fine. We're happy to laugh at them, we can leave that in. But he says, you just change around the others, you know. So in Italy, apparently the Italian guy becomes Spanish, and he goes, Heil Franco. And so forth and so on. And there's just these little changes you make. You know, I've seen how French, and René goes from a comedy, high-accented voice to a deep, manly voice, because he's got to be, he's a big man, he loves women, you know. So they changed the dub. This is the art of dubbing. It isn't just about the voices chosen, it's about can you convey the humour. And Matt Greenfield always said that Nadesco killed him, but he loved doing it because he said trying to figure out the same jokes about physics in English was so hard that he had to go to the University of Texas and ask a physics professor to help him with the dub. But of course it's legendary. It's one of the great early English dubs of anime. But coming back to censorship, so comedy, sometimes the way to deal with censorship is actually just to understand it's culturally different and change it for your culture. But Germany and Britain both have censorship boards. You have the BBFC in England and you have the FSK in Germany. And the German censorship boards are killer. You have to pay both boards when you're a label. You send them the video to certify, you pay them to certify, this is how they make their money. And then they tell you, yes, you get this number, or no, you don't, or you have to make these cuts, or what have you. The FSK are legendarily much stricter than the BBFC, even though Germany has had an insane amount of terrible horror films released there in all their gory glory. And one of the things we discovered, we discovered after my years of working with the BBC, where I discovered there's a swear. Actually, let me just rewind for a moment. So in late 2003, early 2004, we're busy doing, I think it was Angelic Layer. Thank you, it was Angelic Layer. And we were trying to get a PG on every volume so that we could release the entire set as a PG, because we wanted to try and convince a British TV channel to buy it as a kids show and show it. Because we thought it had real potential. Not only was it clam, but we thought it was a clam show that appealed to boys as well as girls, and we thought this is the one, so we need to get it. And then we get here from the BBC, no, we're giving you a 12 on one of these volumes. And we're like, nah, we can't do that. We need to change it. Ring them up, find out what's changed. So I rang them, I said, what's the problem? I said, well, the problem isn't with the dub, the problem isn't with the Japanese track, the problem is with one of your commentaries. I was like, okay, what's the problem with the commentary? Wishing I didn't submit the commentary because you didn't have to. And she said, well, one of your voice actresses refers to her character as a retard. And I was like, have you watched it? Because the character kind of a little bit is. And she said, yes! And she said, I understand she's talking about the character, but the problem is our guidelines state cannot use that word retard below a 12 because it is a copyable insult. And also here in Britain we do have a medical definition of retard that is actually applied to people who suffer from a particular mental state, and we think it is offensive to, we've asked people about this and it's generally considered offensive to those people to use it as an insult. And I was like, you don't have to tell me, I grew up opposite a school that was full of people with various disabilities, and everybody, including the owners of the school, called it the spastic school. I said, I know what it's like in Britain for these sorts of kids. It's not easy. So I understand that, but are you sure, because it's a commentary and she's talking about a cartoon character, are you sure we can't get around this? And we couldn't. So I said, well look, I want to avoid this in the future. Can you give me a list of which swear words mean which BBFC age rating? She said, yes, of course I can. And she said, and she just started reeling off, and she said, now, have you got a pen? I went, yes, okay. She said, so if you can use one shit at 12, and as long as it's not in a specific context, but if you start using multiple shits, then it becomes, and she didn't have a fuck here, and I'm sitting here, and there's a point about halfway through of some giggling in the office, trying to put it over the phone. And she says, are you still following this? Like, yes, I'm following. And then she says, and she says, when it comes to cunt, it's very different. I said, I'm sorry, but that's a flat out AD. And at this point I said, excuse me, do you mind, did you just take a moment? She said, yes, of course. And I put the phone on, I just started laughing. And the whole office said, are you okay? And I said, I'll tell you afterwards. And I went back online, and she said, did you have to laugh? I said, yeah. She says, I get that a lot. So anyway, we created the swear list and we sent it to the dubbing studios in Houston, and we said, sorry guys, you've got to keep an eye on this stuff. And they were outraged. They were like, we're America, land of free speech, you can't do this. And we're like, well, fine, do you want to pay the extra money for the BBOC? Oh, no, we don't want to do that. Okay, fine. Which meant that you then had commentaries afterwards with actors trying really hard. I mean, I think it was Monica Reale said it, and she and some of her friends on the next commentary were like, yes, that word, we can't talk about it in England, it became a thing. Anyway, so that had made our lives easier. Even fans were like, really, you're giving in to censorship? And we're like, there's a money issue here, and I'm sorry when it comes down to it, we're a business. We need certain shows to get certain ratings, and frankly, we don't want to keep paying the BBFC for reviewing something once it's cut. So, we brought it under control. And that said, those of you may not remember, but the reason this all started is that in the 90s, Manga famously submitted a Japanese subtitle tape to the BBFC for a film and got a rating they wanted, and then released it with an additional English dub that was chock full of swearing. That breached the guidelines. And that is why the BBFC then put an extra eye on anime and insisted that you submit both the dub and sub, which means that we were paying double the price of any other company per film, because we have to pay for each one. That was one of the reasons why anime was so hard to get going in Britain, because you had to pay twice as much as any other company to the BBFC to get a single disc out. And that's also why TV shows took ages to come out here. You know, it was all features. When ADV started, we were one of two, other than MVM, we were the only people doing TV. Manga didn't do TV shows. And the reason we did it was because we were willing to take that risk, but we had to figure out, could we afford it? It was a very, very expensive undertaking. Anyway, coming back to the Germans, the FSK. Yeah, so the story about the Germans is quite interesting because it's reared its head again recently with regards to films like Ex Machina and other films that portray characters who look female but are mechanical. We had the German license for Chobits, which is a show I genuinely like, and I like the manga as well, and I think Clamp were a very intelligent analysis of men, women, hardware, love, lust. You know, it's a lot smarter than people give credit for. we nearly ended up with a situation where it was the equivalent of 18R. Anyone who's watched it will know that it's not. It's a very sweet, very cute show about a future in which we have computers, but they are now in human-shaped casings rather than stacks or boxes, which means that you can buy a computer that your personal computer, in the show it's called a Persicom, that looks like whatever you want it to be, pretty much. So you have men, women, people of trans going around with all kinds of computers that may or may not look like a partner or a friend or a family or just be something that you can relate to. It's an interesting concept. It raises all sorts of questions about us and our relationship with technology. And it's about because it's an anime, it's about a young guy who can't get anywhere with girls, and they're having the lucks on a naked female Persicom who happens to look like she's underage, and figures out how to switch her on, and then realises he's got to dress her, and then realises he's got to talk to her and teach her and all this kind of thing. So he's basically got to learn how to actually relate to her. You know, the great mystery for so many men at the time. And the Germans were like, yeah, we'll give it the age rating of 3, episode after episode. Age rating of 3. We're like, great, no problem, great, this is fantastic, we can sell copies anywhere, fine. And then we get to this one episode where she decides that because her owner is desperate for money, she has to go out and get a job. So she goes down to the streets and she looks for vacancies in places and walks into a place where a guy says, I'll have a perfect job for you. And what does it involve? Well, you need to sit in this room here and basically sit there, and occasionally you will hear from men on the other side of these walls, and they will ask you to move around or maybe have a pose, and we'll pay you. She's like, so I just have to sit here, really? And, yeah, occasionally you might have to pose a bit. Okay, and you're going to pay me for that? Yeah. So basically she ends up in a peep show. And being Clamps, played for laughs, and after all, it is a robot. It's a robot, it's a computer. It's literally one of these things here, just physically looking like a woman. And the Germans are like, no. You're going to have to sell that. We're going to give it the equivalent of 18R. And we're like, you are kidding. Because in Germany, it's not like in England where you at least have a few shops in Soho where you can go and buy an 18R. In Germany, the actual rule was that you cannot buy it anywhere except in a few websites where it is listed specifically. So we would literally have been right next to all of the specialised porn videos. So, I'm not even going to... Those of you who know your porn will know that the Germans have some very interesting specialities. The fact is, Chobits didn't deserve to be on the same shelf for a multitude of reasons. And they didn't just tell us a simple thing, they gave us a whole page. It's effectively a philosophical argument as to why a character in an animation who looks like an underage girl getting involved in a peep show deserves to be restricted for viewing. And they basically pointed out the notion of sexualization. And we were like, look, we know that, but that's the point of the show. The show is trying to make you think about that and go, isn't it a problem? Isn't it possibly something we need to think about? And so we said, what are we going to do? Because this is going to scupper the release for the rest of the series. And so one of our German staff said, she was a doctorate twice in various media studies, a real expert. She said, I can do this, I can handle this. And she wrote I think it was 2-page philosophical argument about why they should let it go through, because the character is not human. Because it is an animated version of a computer. And she just went into all the detail. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it's certainly a philosophical question that science fiction has been addressing for a while, and one worth addressing. And here's the thing, the FSK went, yeah, all right, we accept that, and put it out. Which just goes to show that if you know your culture right, as I said earlier, you can get things done. Censorship isn't always the great negative you think it is. Yes, it's about trying to protect a set of morals that we all may feel are outdated or non-existent or just politically motivated. But at the same time, the people who work in these businesses are often very intelligent, very trained, and you can discuss things with them. There's a reason we have so much uncut horror back in Britain now. I know the guy at the BBC who specifically has been responsible for making sure Arrow get all their stuff through. And he's a brilliant guy to talk to. He knows his world cinema inside out. Very intelligent guy. And he's not gone, oh, I have to cut things. He's gone, how do we convince people? How do we write the argument so that legally it goes through? And that was an eye-opener for me. I've never bashed censors since. I still have problems with it. I still want my uncut DVDs. I still import my uncut Blu-rays from everywhere. And I hate it when streamers cut stuff. Come on, guys, you know. But it was an eye-opener to me. It was a real lesson. Know your culture. Anime is, yes, it's Japanese, but there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot more to the creators. There's a lot more to selling it. So if you get into the industry, you've got to be aware of that. Right, let me hurry up a little. Number 5, talking of porn. It used to be, and this was a truism, if you wanted to know what was next on the tech distribution curve, follow the porn industry. AKA, it's research, honest girl. Because, yes, it's one thing to be in the office looking at porn, it's another thing to be in the office looking at porn and the boss goes, oh good, that's what I wanted to know. You'd be surprised. I have done many things as part of working in anime that I never thought I'd get to do in an office, legitimately, in front of me, including buy goth girl costumes for a friend. That's another matter entirely. Anyway, honest, anyone who saw Anime Network will understand what I'm talking about. I had to dress the TV presenters, so yeah. Anyway, this is not a joke. This has been true since porn helped VHS beat out Philips 2000 and Betamax. In all seriousness, historically speaking, one of the reasons, well, not the only one of the reasons VHS won the tape war back in the day was because porn, as in a business, decided to throw its weight behind VHS. Very simply. Because the replicators knew that even if they didn't want to be involved with porn, somebody still got to manufacture it, and they could make the money, and the volume was going to be huge. A lot of things you may or may not take for granted were tested out or originated with pornography. DVD menus and extras. Porn DVDs created the idea of the alternative angle, which is not, got used less and less in mainstream videos, but obviously you can see why it was invented. Also the idea of menus that had graphics and took you through different things, or created like a mini game, or suggested a room and you could go in through different doors, those sort of things. They did all that first, even if it was incredibly basic, but they came up with those ideas. They were doing streaming before any of us in the business were actually seriously thinking about how to make that work. Creator performer-led private sites, they were doing that before. I mean, I was talking to the voice actor guests here, and they're having an Amazon list, and your fans follow you directly, not the business, and they follow what you do through your social feeds, and they buy you gifts. Porn was doing that before the mainstream was. But also the erosion of monetary value through free video sites. That's how I knew when I was still in the business that we were in trouble before we were in trouble, because porn was already going to free tube sites. There was already arguments over people ripping off content. They dealt with they never dealt successfully with the piracy issue before we did. And I thought, if even they're losing money, then my God, we are in trouble as a business. And frankly, I think that the last few years in pornography have probably to some degree borne that out. Especially the revelation by Crack that the company that owns most of the rip-off tube sites actually is investing in most of the actual porn companies themselves, which means that it's all one big messy business. And the only people, I intended, and the only people making money from it are the guys at the top, and everyone else is getting ripped off for something or another. Performers in that business only last 2 years. At least voice actors have a longer career, thank God. But it's a sad fact that it used to be the thing you looked at. These days, I think we're all kind of leveling out at the same place. I think every industry, regardless of what its content matter is stuck in the same place, trying to just make money. Yes, Jeremy said last night that everybody in anime is a fan, and they're all doing things because they love it. But they all try to earn a living too, keep a roof over their heads. Maybe put some money away for a holiday. It's a business too, and I think it's very easy to forget that when we just want to watch anime. there's more to it than that. Another reason we got so many rubbish anime for the last 5 years was because no one wanted to spend money to make good anime. It was made cheaply because then there was some profit to be had. It's only now that things more money is being spent and we're getting better quality and more people are buying it or paying for Netflix, you know, we're seeing an uptick in the quality again. So, you know, yeah, it's research, honest. Okay, the most vocal complainers are the minority, aka never read the comment section. Yeah, I learned this long before we had to worry about the insanity of YouTube commenting. It's all about the numbers. So many bosses I've worked for. This is doing so badly. Look at what they're saying online. How many people are saying it online? What does that matter? Look what they say about the release. How many people are saying it online? 5. How many copies did we sell last month, boss? We sold over 1,000 units. So those 5 people, how important are they? Not really very important. But we really shouldn't have it up there. It's bad PR. We sold over 1,000 units. We can ignore them. It's okay. You know, getting a level head about what is and isn't a majority, a minority, what is reality, is very important. We have lost that war, I think, in the DVD and film business. I think we've lost it. So many companies see something on Twitter and react straight away and make changes in the editing room. And it's like, where is the artistic vision? You know, if you want an interactive video, then there are enough games to play. If you want a film or an anime, let the creators do their business and then have a complaint with them afterwards. You know, interfering halfway through or based on a rumour is something I'm seeing more and more, and I find it quite depressing because, you know, that's not what I want to see anime for. I want to see a vision of what the creators came up with. If I wanted to see a fan version, I'd go watch a fan animated video. You know, fans seem to be insistent, at some fans, not all fans, God, some small amount of fans, want an involvement in something that they don't want to be involved in. Because if you say to them, please, join the industry, come and write, make your own. Oh, no, look at that. I'm going back to my keyboard TLE, you know. And you think, it's like, guys, you know, I love how many fans have become members of the industry. You know, I did say last night I wouldn't say this, but I will say this now. I remember the head of Anime Limited as a member of the Edinburgh Anime SOC, dressed in his goth gear with massive platform boots and a long coat. When I went up to see them, they wanted to know about screening anime. And of course, this guy is arguably the single most powerful person in bringing anime to Britain today. And that is entirely because of his dedication and his love to anime and the business itself. Leaving aside the fact that he has a double master's and I think has a PhD as well. You know, this is what he does. This is what he wants to do with his life. And his whole office is made up of fans. So I'm not saying that fans can't get involved. I'm saying fans should get involved. But sitting there and yelling about it online doesn't change. It doesn't make the changes necessarily always better. Sometimes it does, but not always. Aggregators are part of that problem for me. Everyone says, oh, it's got a score of this. And I always say, how many people voted? That's what matters. It's not a question of this is the score. If 5 people vote for something on Rotten Tomatoes and it has a fresh score, that's only 5 people. You know, that's not an indicator of what you made and is it any good. The indicator is A, how well it sold, and B, if you're doing something theatrical, how well it then sells the week afterwards because of the drop-off. You know, how well does it do once it hits Blu-ray, DVD, streaming? And also, sometimes, every now and then, did you make it for someone else or did you make it for yourself? I love filmmakers and creators who make things for them, and the rest of us get to look at it. We get to peek inside their brains. It's the fun of art. Art is a mirror, and we all get to look at it and see the various reflections coming at us. That's the point. And I love that, even when it's commercial art, you know, that's what it's about. And hence why I say to anyone I've worked with when they're creative, I've said, ignore the comment section or you will lose the will to create. And they do. People get into depressions. People go, oh my God, everything I've ever done is terrible. I'm never doing it again. Because, you know, some artists are sensitive. And again, I say, it is not to ignore all fan comment. There's loads of great and important things fans say and do, and it's relevant. You're still the audience. You're still the people who pay our bills. But it's not a simple relationship like a cashier and a supermarket. You don't just pay us and get them to complain when things are this, that, and the other. There's more going on here. There's a process. There's a storytelling element. You know, again, it's not a fully interactive medium. And so I think anybody who gets into the business has got to figure out where their balance lies, and just for their own mental health, I think it's very important, because you could just go mad if all you ever tried to do was listen to comments. Torrenting killed, delayed more shows than it actually publicised. Crunchyroll would probably argue that this is not the case, given they managed to go from being pirates to a legitimate company. But that said, when we're talking about numbers, I used to look at all the torrents and analyse that against the licenses we were picking up, so we could figure out how many DVDs to make or release, or how much to pay. But the problem is the Japanese started doing that too. And one of the problems this led, famously, for Manga UK, was nobody in the West could afford Naruto for at least 2 years after it started coming out and people's torrents didn't even want to see it. The demand was there, the numbers were massive on torrent, huge numbers. But that's the point, they were torrented. Everyone had it already. So the Japanese were like, great, you can pay us this. We're like, no, we can't pay you that, because we're not actually going to sell that as the same number. The number of people who rip something off is not the same as the number of people who buy it. I'm convinced of that because I've seen the numbers. I used to have to analyse this. I don't just say that because I'm anti-pirate, I'm not. Sometimes the only way to watch things is that. Some of my favourite shows have never been released in the West. Thank God for the fan dubbers and fan subbers who made it possible for me to understand it. I get that. But the number of people over the years who said, oh, we helped you. I'm like, you didn't have to pay the money. You didn't help us, you put the price up. And they're not the only people, there are other ways to put the price up too. Some guy going around with his film company saying, I will pay this amount for a film, can raise the price all around. A very famous individual who I should not mention for fear of being sued, ran his company around, but also raised the price throughout all of Asia for movies coming from Hong Kong, Korea, and Japan, because he would pay triple what anyone else was paying when he first started in the business. And he got the films, and then as more films were made by those creators and those films started to flop, he lost money and eventually his company went bankrupt. But he raised the price for everyone else. He gave everyone in Korea and Japan and China had a false idea of what a film was worth in Britain or America. And that's what happened with anime. That's another reason One Piece took so freaking long. It's not just, yes, it's also the original creator, the approvals process, very important. You know, when you have a creator who's heavily involved and wants to sign off on everything, and if they don't like the company or they don't like what you've done with something else, it can take years, I get that. But also how much they wanted. I've never heard of someone coming to me and saying, oh, this is what the Japanese wanted to pay for something. Isn't it amazing? That's all. Never heard that in 13 years. All I've ever heard in 30 years is, yeah, we can't afford that now. Give it 2 years. Give it 3 years. We just can't afford it. But the great example of this for me is Victorian Romance Emma, which I absolutely adore. And as you know, is still not out on DVD in this country. It did finally get a Crunchyroll streaming, I believe, a couple of years ago. I love that show to bits. And we saw it as a fan sub. And it even had notes for people who didn't know a lot about Victorian Britain. And so I said to my boss, I think we can sell this in England. It's English, for goodness sake. Look at it, it's English people doing English things. This is a Japanese view of them. But it's wonderful. This is 4 years before Downton Abbey and the revival in live action of period drama. And I said, there is going to be a revival of period drama on British TV. We can get ahead of the curve. By the time we get this out and dub it, and more importantly, go to the BBC and say, dub this with us, and you can have the rights for television, we could have cleaned up. I was convinced of it. So my boss says, fine, next Tokyo Anime Fair, I'll ask. So I get a phone call in the middle of the afternoon in London, and he's at the Tokyo Anime Fair, and he says, very simple. This is the figure per episode they want for us to own the rights because they're going to fund season 2 from what we pay. Can we make this amount of money back in England? I'm trying to remember, but I think it was $13,000 an episode. And I said, no. He said, think carefully, because this is where I pull the trigger or not. If you want it, that's how much I have to pay, but I want you to make that back in England alone, not in America. And I was thinking, dude, you can make this in America and England, no trouble. And if you throw in Germany, because we have a German logo, we can probably make it back there too. And he's like, no, you have to make it back per episode in England. And I was like, I'm sorry. 13 episodes for season 1, 13 episodes for season 2, 1,300 episodes up front. There is no chance in hell we are ever going to make that back on DVD. Not after we paid for the dubbing. And he said, fine, we're not buying it. And it's still not out on DVD here today. Now that's my fault. I'm not happy about that. I said no. And no other company has picked it up since. But that is the reality of the business. There is They knew it had been torrented, they had seen the numbers, they knew that CNX were doing the manga, they felt that meant there was a bigger market than there actually was. And thank God for Yen Press for actually saving them us and with the manga as well, and giving us an uncut manga. And then, you know, other situations, Library Wars. I mean, God, I love Library Wars so much. I don't know if I can explain that to any of you guys. I just do. It's just everything I like about science fiction and Japanese romance in anime and military SF and books and freedom, and I just love it to bits. And it's a great, huge, stonking franchise in Japan. Huge. It's won awards. It's won Seiyons, which are the Japanese, the great Japanese science fiction awards. And it's not here. And there's a 13-part anime series by Production IG. There's the 4 original light novels. There's a spin-off animated movie, also by Production IG, which was a massive hit. And then there's a live-action movie version, which is also something of a hit, even though I think it's terrible. And when the anime movie came out, the Japanese Blu-ray had English subs, and I thought, oh, that's going to make it easier for a licensor. You know, a lot of licensors just buy the movie, even if they don't release the series. And I said to next time I was talking to Andrew Cartridge, I said, hey, Andrew, please get Library Wars. He said, no. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, have you seen the torrents? I said, yeah. He said, therefore, we're not getting it. I was like, okay, fine, sorry. He said, it's just not enough people will pay for it. And I really hope one day he changes his mind. I hope somebody does it, because it is a good show. If you've never seen it, I don't want to say go and torrent it, but go and torrent it. It's good. It's really fun. I mean, there's a shoujo and a shonen manga, and the shoujo manga has been translated in English and is still being published, and so you can read that, and that is fun. And there is a fantastic fan translation of the first 3 or 4 light novels. She's working on the 4th one. But that is not being licensed. It's not coming out. It's never coming out. So that is the sad reality of things, because it's so huge in Japan. Japan's like, we love it here in Japan, you'll love it too, but that means you'll sell thousands, so pay this much. And it doesn't work like that. There's still that illusion. People don't always have the clear idea. Okay, the flip side of yesterday's untitled discussion. Confession number 8, being nice to one fan can grow you an entire audience, aka Chloe the One True Noir. So, as Chloe said yesterday when she was on the panel, she and I met in 2003 at what was the very first MCM Expo, partnered with the SFX event at the time. And I had yet to sell anything directly to a fan one-on-one. We'd finally taken off on DVD, but you know, I was doing it all remotely from the office, talking to salespeople who were putting it in HMV and the shops at the time. And she comes up to me and she says, hello, and I'm like, oh, hello, it's the person who wants to buy anime. This is nice. I need to sell it now because it's now down to me. There's no salesperson, there's no HMV sticker for us. I've got to make sure someone buys something here. And she goes, oh, you know, I mean, as you said yesterday, you know, you asked me about anime and what it was, you know, what you were interested in. And my big response wasn't buy this, because I knew how to sell something. My question was, what do you like? And what is it you like watching in terms of normal live action? And she said, you know, I like various films. We talked about Luc Besson, and I said, do you like Fab Nikita? And you know, she said, yeah, I really, really like those. And I said, aha, I have the show for you, and sold her Noir. And she went off and said, oh, you bought it. And I thought, oh, great, my first sale. Woo. And then the following year, it was Minami, wasn't it? 2004.
Minami 2004, yeah.
Yeah, she comes along to my stand then and goes, hello, and she's dressed as Chloe, wandering off from the show, and I'm like, oh, cosplaying now. Yeah, cosplaying now, yeah, great. And she says, oh, I really loved it. I'm telling all my friends about it, you know, I'm really getting into it. So I was like, okay, cool, great. And then the next event, she comes along and she brings 2 friends who are also cosplaying, and they're also buying DVDs. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. This is turning into, you know, we're going to start selling for her Chloe now. She's doing a great job. And my boss said to me at the time, she said, that's our #1 fan. Right there. She's doing it for us, she's selling it. And it went on. I mean, the next time I saw you, you had what, 5 friends with you? Buying DVDs from us?
That just kept growing.
You just kept telling people and making people watch anime, and they kept going, I love it, I'll come and buy it with you, I'll come to this event.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It was so cool. You made us, you know, you showed me something that, because I didn't do formal marketing, because I had to teach myself marketing, you showed me something really, really freaking important. The idea of the fan advocate. This is where fans are great and can do great things for you as a business. She showed me that it doesn't, literally, being nice to someone costs nothing. It cost me nothing to be nice to you that first day. And you made us so much money back. And so, thank you, Chloe. But also, you know, you also just made me aware that the fan community, the good things, what it's about. If you forget the negative comments I used to get in my mailbox, I used to think, oh, well, Chloe likes us and Chloe knows what we're about, that's okay. And that got me through some difficult times. So, but we're good friends now, obviously. And she's one of many committee members I've known now since a teenager, buying stuff from us. Yes, thank you, Jen, and Alex. But it's been, it was a lesson. There is more than one way to market. I've met so many people with marketing degrees who have what we call tick box marketing. They have a list of things they must do if it's product X, sell it using X, Y, and Z on the list. And I say, what about the fan? And they go, oh God, no, I don't know any fans about this stuff. I'm just going to sell it, that's my job. And I'm like, you might want to talk to them. And that is the good side of social media. I will say this. Yes, companies are reacting too fast and making too many changes. But it is so much better to have the feedback than not have it at all. It's better to know that you can talk to people, you have advocates, people who will talk about it for you. Sometimes I think it's a bit much. Sometimes I think you get to a point where you're getting free publicity, and I feel like you guys deserve more than just making money for companies who don't pay you anything other than the anime. But, it's an interesting relationship. But yeah, it just shows you that, to me, to this day, I still think I've met so many dickheads in the business. Being nice costs nothing. And it will do you a lot of good. Almost at the end here. Statistics, talking about passion and fans. Statistics cannot quantify passion, or as I'm calling it today, pantsu. Amecon, I can't remember if it was 2004 or 2005, we had a TV show this called Magica Blitz Tactics. Some people remember it. Magica Blitz Tactics was a 60s style sci-fi show where every opportunity was taken to show knickers. Now, it was animated, but if it was live action, there would be cameramen in a hospital with broken necks. Because the only way to get certain shots was basically to contort yourself. Because back then, those of you who remember the days of volume 1 in a box that you could buy, we used to often stuff the space that was left in the box with the other volumes with a t-shirt. This is quite a, for Jeremy said something last night that makes it sound like with the Gundam Phase 1 releases, they might be bringing the notion of the box in volume 1 back, and I was like, oh my God, we've come all the way back around again. And the designers in Houston were like, great, we can do panties. We wanted to do panties for ages at the con because fanboys would put it on their head and be really silly. Woo, we don't have to do a t-shirt. I was like, okay, great, panties. We're going to sell panties now. So they designed a set of white panties with the Magical Blitz logo over the crotch. And for those who remember it, that logo was a rose with a gun that's smoking over it. And they shipped us a bunch of promotional use because we didn't do the boxes in the UK. And I took them with me to Amecon, so I'm standing there with all my DVDs and shirts and posters and panties. But they're all wrapped tight in little squares in plastic, so you can't tell that there's a way up. And nobody was buying the show much. I even had the trailer up, no one was buying it. I know Minami is not usually a very adult con, but they were okay with us. They were like okay with us showing it because the trailers were too bad. And I thought maybe everyone's embarrassed. Maybe this is just not for the English fan, I know that's not true, but in public. So I started giving them away with volume 1. I said, if you buy volume 1, you can have this, it's panties. And only one guy, I think his name, a guy called Jamie, said, hey, all right, I'll buy it, I really want to see that show. And his sister is standing there, and she goes, Sister Louise is looking at it, and she goes, what is this? I said, oh, that's a panty. She says, really? Yeah, I was like, yeah, we can do t-shirts, we do panties. And she goes, okay, and she flips it, and she says, oh, they're real panties. Meaning the brand was a brand she recognized, an actual American brand, apparently very reliable. And I said, okay. She said, can I have a spare one? I was like, yeah, sure, there you go. She's great, she wanders off. And my friend Chris, who worked with me at ADV, was selling it, and he says, well, there you go, someone wants a panty. And she comes back later and she says, guys, look. She goes, whoo! And Chris and I are both like, this is the first time seriously it happened to us, right? The first time. We were like, and I was like, I was like, 1 second, and I had my first digital phone. I was like, do you mind for the office? And she went, yes, of course. And I sent it back. Chris worked in Wales, I was the only guy in the London office, and I sent it back to all the ladies of the office, and I said, look, panties. And they were like, okay. And Louise said, I'm going to tell everybody, all the girls at the Amecon need to know that you've got panties. She said, we never have enough panties at cons. You always need spare panties. I was like, okay. Next thing you know, girl after girl is coming to the con. Can I have panties, please? I think did you get him on some Jenna at the time? Yeah, he did. And it was crazy and fun, and because I was single back then, Chris turned to me later on the day and said, "Did you remember to put your phone number on those?" I went, "No, of course I didn't." It didn't even occur to me I should do that. But it's a wonderful story and it's funny, but it was actually the first time that I realised my boss was wrong about female fans. My boss, who is very fashionable, and I've worked for as many men as I've worked for women, but she is arguably to this day the best business person I've ever worked for, with the straightest head on her shoulders, and very inspirational. And she won't mind me using her name, she's no longer in the business, but Sharon Parker, who was head of accounts for ADB and then left to run the international wing and hired me into this business and gave me a whole new life. She said to me very early on, she said, "You need to understand that the reason you won't be selling your fans, even though there are fans you're meeting at the cons who are women, you won't be selling them DVDs yet, is because there are many more demands on the female wallet than there are for men." She said, even if they're not particularly fashionable, she said, there is makeup, there is jewelry, there are clothes, there are shoes, but she said, there is a ton of things that you are being sort of pushed at you before you spend on a DVD. She said, here's the thing, women will buy manga. I mean, at that point, Forbidden Planet had a big manga section, I was seeing a lot of girls, and I was like, oh wow, they buy manga, that's great, they'll start buying DVDs. She said, look, here's the thing. She said, here's my handbag. She said, see a manga? Boom, fits in it perfectly. I can take it with me. She says, here's a DVD. She says, A, it doesn't fit. She says, B, what am I going to do with it? She says, I've got nothing to play it on. I mean, obviously this was when iPods were just starting, we didn't have video iPods. We're still a ways away. And she said, so don't worry about it. That, for me, was the starting point where I thought, no, she's wrong. This is going to be changing incredibly soon, and we need to be ready for it. In terms of the licenses we buy, in terms of how we provide access, that was the realization for me. Because not only are all these women coming to me saying they want panties for practical reasons, not just silly behavior reasons like the design stuff, but the designers it was the classic industry mistake. We think it's for one audience, it's for another. It's designed for one audience, it's actually good for another. The idea of a product that actually faces out towards multiple audiences. So, and people in all sorts of businesses don't always grasp this. They say, we made this for this people, and don't realize that they might have a third or fourth option if they look carefully, and then sell in that direction. And for me, marketing has never been about tick box, and it's never been about, we only have two levels. Well, traditional marketing says you have a core audience, a primary audience, and a secondary audience. To me, it's holistic, it's circular. The product is in the middle, and there are all these demographics and groups around, and you have to cut across them in as many ways as possible. So if you could, and that's again why I love social media. We started using social media in 2006, and one of the reasons I loved it was because you could figure out where to sell things and who to, and you basically drill down into more granular groupings, and it's hard, and you have to spend more money to reach them, but you might benefit better as a marketer. Then when Richard Jones came out on DVD and sold so many copies, and I said to my boss, look, you cannot tell me that all this, because the sales guys were saying, well, it's just guys buying it to give it to people as presents. I was like, look at the numbers. You cannot tell me that this is at the top of the British DVD charts, at selling the quantities it is, just because men are buying it as gifts for women. That's bollocks. It is because women are buying it. Women are buying it. DVD players are now 30 quid in Tesco's. You're telling me that women aren't buying it? It's changing, guys. And this is my greatest problem with the industry, is they don't see these signs. Few people like me, or people academics are outside see it. They don't see it, they don't keep up. And I hate, even now, when I talk to people still in the business, and I'm like, you guys are still having this argument that you were having 4 years ago when I left? Seriously? About streaming, about video rights. They're so backwards. They don't even see that the end is in sight for film and television. I've gone back to teaching recently as well as doing journalism. And I'm talking to the 15-year-olds I'm teaching and looking at how they use phones and how they use media, talking to them about what they do in their spare time. They don't watch television anymore. They barely watch films anymore. They interact completely differently with, storytelling, the idea of storytelling itself, they just interact with it in a completely different way. They're going to be full consumers with their own money to spend in 10 years' time. That's how long we've got before film and television has got to change the way it works completely if we're still going to make money. All right, coming to the end. A few things that I remembered last night when I was going over this again that I hadn't found from anywhere else. Always appreciate a job that lets you look for nudity in a trailer in the afternoon in the office. that was my great eye-opener in 2003. I was sitting there in a hot office in Soho, and my boss says, "We're not sure if this trailer has nudity in it. BBFC want to give it a 12. Can you just check and see if it's got nudity in it?" Okay. You're legitimately asking me to do this. And when I came to the end, I said, "Yeah, there's tits in it." She said, "See?" She said, "Wasn't that fun?" I was like, I'm not sure how to respond to that, Sharon. She said, "Oh, come on, you're an anime fan. I knew you'd enjoy it." She said, "Where else are you going to get a job that lets you do this?" So I thought, yeah, I better learn to. That's why people get into the media. Always proof and reproof documents. One mistake can cost between £600 and £1,000. My first proofing error in 2003 cost £600 to the company to reprint the sleeves for the DVD. My second one cost over £1,000. Very small errors, but the problem was there were errors in the things that matter to the Japanese licensor, so credits and copyrights. So yeah, I was tired, I admit it, but triple check, and that goes for any business. Never say how damn good a show is in the bar at a convention when you're talking to other licensors and your own label is umming and ahhing about buying it. I made the mistake of I can't even remember which convention, I don't even remember if it was here or where it was, I think it might have been in Aya. And I just remember talking, because you guys know the dealers often hang out together, and the industry is so small that there was one Amecon, where a whole bunch of us went to dinner in a cab, and I realised that if the cab crashed, that was the end of the anime business in Britain. Crazy. Thankfully it didn't crash. But one of the things I was complaining about was that, because we didn't know this at the beginning and at the end for ADV films, but they were not buying certain shows, and I was complaining about why weren't we buying them, because in Britain it would have made a fortune. And I'd fallen in love with Black Lagoon very early on. And I was just going, "Oh my God, Black Lagoon is what we've been waiting for." It's the sales guys are always saying, "Can't you bring us another Helsing?" And I'm like, "There aren't any other Helsings until they make another one," which they did. And I was like, and I saw Black Lagoon, and I was like, "We will make so much money on Black Lagoon. The Germans will love it, Britons will love it, forget the Americans. The Americans will love it anyway, but we'll make money. It'll be fine. It'll dub really well. The characters are, mostly English speakers." And I was like, and they're not buying it at ADV, and I don't understand why. And Tony at MV, I was like, "Oh, really?" And it was only a couple of cons later where he said to me, "You do know I went straight away on the phone and rang Pioneer." And I was like, "Great, I did that." But that's the way the business works. That you much as you love your fellow dealers, you sometimes have to learn to keep your mouth shut around them. Germans do cosplay better than the Brits. Sorry guys, I love so much cosplay I see in Britain, but I have seen the most insanely good cosplay when I was over in Germany, and that was 10 years ago. They're still really good at it. And I'll tell you what I think the secret is to it. And this goes against the grain with all Japanese professional cosplayers I've talked to, because they are all about suffering. They are like, you do what you have to do the character. It is winter, then you wear the summer outfit because you look good doing it, and you just suffer. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to work for all the Europeans, sorry. And the Germans believe in comfort first. That's the key. They want to be wearing something that works as clothing, but it has to look like a character. And I know that sounds crazy, but so many cosplayers look so much better when they're comfortable in what they're wearing. Whatever work they have to do underneath the cos to get comfortable is another matter, but the point is that it makes a difference in how they hold themselves, how long they can go during the day. I mean, it was so hot in Cologne, and Cologne as a town is amazing, but the fact that back then, they're smaller now, but back then, the German cons, you could get the whole town behind the con, so the cinemas were the screening rooms. Okay, the local landmarks were interview rooms and dealers' halls, and the hotels were all actively involved. The mayor was involved. The public transport was actually, if you showed your con badge on the bus, you rode for free, everywhere. Right? I mean, it was insanely great, and there were rock bands playing. It was a festival. It was a summer festival, and they did it really. And the cosplayers are wandering around this insane heat, and they're okay. And I'm like, "Are you guys sure you're okay? You're not gonna pass that?" They're like, "Don't worry, we built this for the summer." And I was like, whoa, there's like vents and things, and they've got it all figured out, materials they've chosen. And I know it sounds crazy, and I don't like to draw division, but I have to say, I was like, yeah, cosplay's great, but God, think about yourselves too, guys. Look after yourself. And the most important thing I learned from my years at ADV Films, never engage in corporate expansion on a loan from a local bank. I I think that's probably what I can say safely and legally about how ADV ended. If you know anything about the laws on bankruptcy in America, you'll know that the laws differ from state to state, and inside some states they differ from county to county. One of the things that has served every anime company based in Texas really well is being based in Texas. So, technically speaking, I never worked for a company that went bankrupt, because it technically never went bankrupt. But they maybe should never have expanded into 6 divisions that included Yukai, manga, toys, etc., off alone. Now, the reason I know that is because my boss was a former head of accounts, and she said when she was the head of accounts, she made sure that everything they spent was based on money they earned. It's a really simple equation as an accountant. Bring the money in, then it can go out. But a lot of people in business, and I hear this to this day, a lot of people in business say, the whole point of making money is to borrow someone else's and then you make your money off it. Yeah, that's true, but then you owe someone something, and they can take it back, Yes, there's these things called angel investors, and if you can find one of them, good, well done, great, you're going to be okay. You still have to do returns, but the point is, you've got more chance of taking risks and having a few things go wrong and not having to lose your money. But if you take it from a bank, the moment the bank's in trouble, you're in trouble. And that was the beginning of the end. 2007 for me started on a high, ended on a low. And then I spent all of the rest of the early part of 2008 shutting down shop, closing sale, finding people work, making sure that everyone got out the door with a job to go to. It was incredibly depressing. I would say that I had PTSD for a while from that in a weird way. Not to demean people who have PTSD, but it certainly felt like it. This is the first time in years I've wanted to wear the shirt again. But it taught me some really important lessons, and that's how I'm going to end here before Q&A, which is you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. The Rolling Stones had it right, and so did the Beatles. All you need is love. A lot of industries run on cheap youth. They get you when you're young, they get you when you're hungry, they get you when you think getting paid anything is good because you're not used to getting paid, and they make you work like the blazers. A lot of industries do this. And we, as fans, love what we love so much, we often sell ourselves cheap. We often go in and ask for less than the people who we think of as professionals, even though we are professionals in our arenas, because we want that job badly enough. And that is how the entire freaking media business has run and continues to run. And then one day it will hit you, and it's hit a few people here, I know, no industry will ever love you back. No product will love you back. Much as I love all the DVDs and the toys and the clothes and the art books and the soundtracks I've collected over the years, when you're in trouble, there isn't a single one of them that will do anything for you. And their value, sadly, frequently depreciates. It doesn't go up, it often goes down. And so only other people and pets can love you back. And what makes anime worth working on, what makes any piece of media worth working on, other than your love of it and your want to tell stories or to communicate to people, or to just get that thing in your head out like artists have done for centuries. The only thing that makes it worth it otherwise is you, the community of people who also love it, and who also want to be with other people and to talk about it, and to communicate, and to gather here at events. And I've now been in this part of this community long enough to have seen people die, poor Ewan, get married, lots of them here, and have births as well. Little Evie isn't here yet, but I'm sure you'll bring her one day. And as has been said before by better people than me, it's all part of life's just pageant. If there's one thing I finally learned is we're all just passing through, but keep each other company along the way. So we have just enough time for a Q&A, say about 18 minutes or so. So does anyone have a question? Yes?
How is the growing YouTube scene, like people on social media praising their own fan reviews and that sort of stuff? How's that?
As far as I can see, reviews, certainly, there is no question that when you look at the number of people on YouTube, and you look at the hits, and you look at the shares, people who do things like reviews, people who are part of the community, that remains huge. And even though there is a lot of dispute and debate over the idea of online reviewers and bloggers receiving not necessarily payment, but shall we say encouragement from companies, it says a lot about the innocence, relative innocence still of fans, that you don't realise that that's been happening all for decades. You know, even if you are privileged to review films because you get paid for it by a newspaper to do it, you're still getting paid. And that's not a negative. I've argued this before when I had a column for SFX Style Anime. My first column argued that just because I get paid to work on this product doesn't make me less of a fan or less passionate about it, and it doesn't compromise my morals necessarily, although you could argue, looking at everything I've said today may suggest otherwise. I do think that if you are a reviewer and you get sent a free disc, I don't think that you should regard that as a compromise of your morals. If you get paid to go to a free screening, which I don't get paid to go to them, but I do get invited to them, so I don't have to pay to see the movie. I just have to pay to get someone to do it. None of us who go to those things consider that a bribe, because if the film's rubbish, we're going to come out and say it. That's what we're there for. That's the job. Professional reviewers do it, and I think by and large, most people who want to review online take the idea of reviewing seriously. They're passionate, they love what they want to talk about, they do it. So that side of the thing is good. In terms of original creatives, people who make dramas and mini TV series, like YouTube versions of TV shows and ideas, the last 2 years I've seen a huge number of press releases for films and TV shows where people who are YouTube stars are trying to break out from YouTube into the wider world, into DVD. So they have 12 million viewers online and they now make a movie and they want to put that on DVD, and the DVD flop. And I think that says something about where their audience is and what the audience wants. We've seen the implosion of quite a few YouTube stars this year, and I think that also speaks to the degree of self-involvement that it takes to sit there and film yourself and then watch yourself again while you edit it and prepare it, and then listen to everyone talk about you and go, yes, me! And I think psychologically being prepared for that is another matter. I think it's very easy to start off when you're young on these things and not realize till later on that maybe, as I said, you think you're getting some love from somewhere, you're not really, unless of course you're the kind of voice actor who makes arrangements for friends to come and stay in their hotel room at a various con, that sort of thing. I'm not saying that that's ever happened on my work. But I think it's healthy, but I also think I do know that people I have friends who run websites, I have friends who run online stuff, and the amount they get paid per click when it comes to ads has dropped massively in the last 12 months. Google have redone all the rates and there's no negotiation. There's no unions to negotiate for you, there's no group activity, they've just told them that the rates are down. So people who are making this amount of money from their 12 million views are now making this amount. And I'm sure Google have very, very good economic reasons for doing it, but it hurts the people who are making a complete living from it. So whether you can make a living from it, if you want to, again, different measures of what is successful. If you're getting the hits and the shares, that's one level of success. If you're trying to make a living from it and pay for your house and your food and whatnot, some people are starting to find that a lot harder. And I don't know where that's going to end. I don't know where that goes. I feel like the internet we knew when I started 13 years ago, I feel like that internet is not dead, but it's gone into hiding. It's so corporate, it's so in control, it's so intrusive. Every time a browser window, you arrive on a website, the company says, we see you have cookies switched off, could you please do it? According to various people I've talked to in InfoSec, that is, the software needed to tell that you have that setting on your machine is software that actually breaks certain rules about what they can and can't do when looking at your machine. Maybe it's a grey area, I don't know. But it does sound to me, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of landing everywhere and not being able to see anything because there's data gathering and mining and all the stuff around it. And I don't think I'm alone. And I think the more people get frustrated with the way the internet works now, the less people will either be on it or they'll look for alternatives. Certainly, now I'm back in teaching, certainly again talking about the year 10s and what they do and how they work with phones, they find that anything like that not doing it, I'll go somewhere else. Let's use WhatsApp. Let's just talk to each other where it's free and easy. Okay. But of course, WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, you know, and who knows how long WhatsApp's going to be without ads. Anyway, sorry, long answer. I hope it answered your question. Any others? Yes.
You mentioned that the Japanese licensees looked at torrent numbers as a...
They started to, yeah.
Is that more or less important than streaming numbers?
I would say over the last 3 years, streaming numbers has gradually taken over. My own, looking at the numbers for my own analysis, I have seen a distinct drop in certain things because streaming comes online. There's also a lot of people, in terms of the kind of websites and the kind of uploaders who provide the files in the first place. Increasingly, a lot of people just can't be bothered if they know it's free streaming. Why bother ripping it? You'll still see 1 or 2 people who do it for downloaders in territories where that's not accessible. Netflix originals often go up onto torrent very quickly because there are people who don't have that. But the more Netflix spreads its wings, the less that's going to happen, And Netflix, and also to be fair, I love Netflix to bits as a product, but God, their PR is awful, and they don't tell people that things will be out on Blu-ray. It was only through Zavi's email that I discovered Daredevil season 1's coming out on Blu-ray this autumn here in the UK. In a limited edition steelbook. And I was like, really? You're not going to tell everyone about that, Netflix? Well done, I agree, it's not it's Marvel's product. Marvel will make money off it, but I'll bet you good money somewhere in the contract there's a kickback to Netflix for it, So you'd think they'd want to publicise these things, but they don't, because the streaming number is important to them, not the DVD sale. They will lose. It's all a question of staggering. So the streaming numbers are important until you have to release a disc, if you're going to release it. And if you're going to release a disc, how big are the streaming numbers and will it cost you disc sales? So yes, very important, I'd say. Whether it's more important depends on which show. Anything else? Jen?
What was your favourite and least favourite show to have worked on?
My favourite show to work on?
And least favourite?
And least favourite? My least favourite show to work on was UFO Ultra Maiden Valkyrie, because I never, ever understood what John Redford saw in it. I don't understand why anyone who bought it saw it other than tits. It gives Ecchi a bad name as a show, and there were 4 seasons of it. Really. The best show, the other bad show I worked on is not bad because the show was bad, it's bad because we couldn't release it, was when the Gatchaman anniversary came around and we had the rights to the original Japanese uncut, undubbed version of Gatchaman. And John was like, right, we can leave this in the States. It's big in Battle of the Planets is big in England. Let's release it there as well. Look into it. And we did the numbers, and the cost of BBF seeing 16 discs worth of extras alone, we would never have made back that money. Literally before we even sold a single disc, we would have been broke on that license. And so my boss and I had to say, we can't release it yet. Because I actually had the numbers for Universal's dubbed Battle of the Planets box set with, the American dub and the recut and all the extra audio and the different music, which is what the fans wanted, because that's what they grew up with. And I was like, they'd only sold something like 1,200 units or so. They reissued it and then sold more, but, there was no way we were ever going to sell 60 discs. So that was a really disheartening and dispiriting experience that you couldn't release one of your favourite shows of all time in its uncut glory, because it was just so long and so expensive. The best show I ever worked on in any capacity whatsoever is a really hard question, because, as you know, I love so many of the shows that I worked on. Possibly still to this day, the ADV flagship of Neon Genesis Evangelion. I know it has its detractors. I know there's people who hate Shinji. I genuinely don't think Shinji is the problem. Yes, he's a problem child, but I don't think that he's the thing that fans make him out to be more latterly. I think he resembles... The point is that he resembles a particular kind of person at a particular kind of time, and when they made that show, they were screwing with all of the concepts and the precepts of mech. And they did it in the most brilliant and imaginative way, even if they completely ran out of money and steam while doing it. Which seemed to be a pattern with Gainax for the first 20 years, Oh look, we're running out of money. Yeah, right, Gunbuster will have to be done in black and white. Oh look, we're running out of money. Yeah, we're going to just have to sketch it and draw it and be done. Oh look, and it just... But you know what? They shot for the moon every time. and they broke new ground, and they changed their genres completely. And that's what I loved about Gynex. You still love about Gynex, you know. So that was probably the best show I worked on. BGC 2040. I like it. You know, I'm a BGC fan from way back. You know, I grew up with the original 80s show. I think 2040 doesn't make it clear what its villains are. They go from being robots into amorphous, malleable bio-blob things that don't make sense if they're supposed to be robots. And also, again, the show doesn't quite know what it's trying to do because they ran out of money again. And that was one of the first ones ADV funded without telling everyone they were actually funding it. It's a show that cuts corners in the animation, and I think that hurts it. I would rather they'd done, like, instead of, it was 20 episodes, 20 episodes? I'd rather they'd done it half the length and spent all the money on each of them and made it look better. I mean, they were only trying to finish up the story they meant to do the first time. And there was also plans to do a 2041, or 2042, whatever it was, and that never happened. I'd rather they did that. I'd rather someone came along and said, right, let's do another one. Let's bring the lightsabers back. Let's not do a reboot quill, you know, I'd be down for that. I think the show I like most, other than Evangelion, is probably Yugo the Negotiator. Because Yugo the Negotiator felt like a breath of fresh air. I loved the dubbing in English because Sarah Lindon worked so hard to make sure that they got the Pashto and the Arabic and the Russian and all the different languages correct in the subtitling and then find accents of the dub. You know, it was basically, you know, a kind of slick Japanese Jack Reacher kind of idea, but with a guy who was in a big muscle mountain, but a really smart, you know, intelligent guy. Somebody who actually looks more like Tom Cruise, you know. And I think Yugo the Negotiator, that was a long-running manga. We never saw the manga translated. Again, licensing, you know, 4-part anime series never did well. That's a series I'd love to see over here. I'd love to see the manga. I'd love to see someone spend more money on it. I mean, post-Netflix, I think it's the kind of show Netflix would do really well, because you could set it in all the different countries that Netflix is in, and then just market it around all the Netflixes. But yeah, that's the other one. I've still got time for a couple more questions. There?
Something you didn't touch on, and also to indulge me slightly, your experiences of dealing with both the specialist and non-specialist press in promoting for reviews.
Oh, well, which one do you count yourself at?
I consider it specialist.
SFX?
Yeah.
Although
I will admit it was difficult sometimes to convince them that we needed to have space for anime.
Yeah. I mean, my experiences with the press over the years. Now I am press. That's really weird. Generally good. I mean, you know, when I started, the fans were in the forums and running websites. I mean, so many people I know here, I know because they reviewed for me. They said, I want to review websites. That's how I met Joe, and that's how I met Becca up there. And is Dan around? Mr. Jackson's around now? Right, Dan, I haven't even told the story of how I met Dan, oh my god. Yeah, talking about proofing documents, if you're going to proof your documents right, make sure you don't make a mistake that's so horrendous that an anime fan rings up and says they're going to take you to trading standards for the product you're releasing, when all you did was make a mistake on the press release. That's how Dan and I met, but we are you know, I've made a lot of friends through reviewing. Paul Jack as well is another one I met, who he used to review for anime on DVD. You know, what can I say? Everybody was really good, everyone was very responsive, people would understand if things were delayed, but obviously they had to be their own deadlines. I've always, the print was harder, because British DVD magazines were like, oh really, we've got to copy more anime, but you would always find one or two people at each of them who would want to, and would bully the editor and say, just give me half a column, I can fit this in, you know. And so we had our first review in DVD, it's now gone, but I think it was DVD Times, and then we had a review. And we had a regular column in DVD World, written by the guy who used to review discs for the BBC and now runs one of the biggest PR agencies in London, who do a lot of work for. They used to do all the manga stuff. Jeremy used to work for them, you know. And then you guys at SFX, you did so much. You know, you made such an effort to make sure that there was coverage, find us room, you know. And then they got that. They tried to do a dedicated magazine. Neo was interesting. They refused to review ADV product for the first 12 months because we refused to bankroll the first issue. Because they came to us and said, please, spend money on us and you can have whatever you want. You can have adverts, you can have reviews, you can have content. And we were like, how much? And they were like, this is how much it costs. And we're like, that's not an investment, that's asking us to run it. So you're basically selling us it. No, we own the magazine, you'll just be helping us run it. And my boss said, we already have New Type, what do we want Neo for? I said, well, let's get New Type started there. She said, let them run. So let's see if there's enough people to buy that, because if they'll buy Neo, they'll buy New Type. And then sadly she was let go before we could do that. I think if ADV hadn't gone under, I think you'd have seen us bring U-Type to the UK and we would have basically thrashed Neo, but it didn't happen. But once Neo started reviewing, it was great. Gemma's wonderful, love her to bits. You know, she's always been good to us. Yeah, I mean, British press, we were lucky. We avoided all the Daily Mail idiocies. We avoided all of the, oh my God, it's Japanese porn again. You know, people like Helen McCarthy and John Clements dealt with that for us on Radio 4. You know, we didn't have to do it. They put themselves in the firing line. Yeah, we were lucky, I guess. I'm still waiting for somebody to dig something up I did at ADV and stick it in the press and go, you ruined my... Oh, yes, one good story. Sorry. So, you guys know Elfin Lee?
Yeah.
As a show. Yeah? Okay, so 13 episodes, and it's based on the manga, and it starts off with what was then, and probably still is, some of the goriest first 5 minutes you've ever seen in an anime. But it's a very cool first 5 minutes. And it's basically about a manipulated psychic genetic weapon who can rip people apart and chooses to, when she's not turning into a cute little girl. Anime. And it was a 15, we were expecting to get an 18. That was the year that BBFC started being really nice on anime. And Gantz was a 15 as well, like really. And we started selling it, and people were like, okay, it's a 15. And then I started running Anime Network, which was a very short-lived cable TV opportunity to put anime on television in Britain. We were on a very obscure, high-number Sky channel. We were 2 hours every Sunday night. And then I think we stripped some shows across the week, and I used to film, this was 2007, I used to script and film links with presenters one weekend at the beginning of the month, and then we do them all for the month, and then screen the episodes across the week, and then I go and film another one, and we do that. And so Emma Vocelli, who's a great British comic book artist, she's currently doing Supergirl for DC and is about to do Back to the Future for IDW, and Stuart Claw, who presents everything at MCM Expo, they were our presenters, because he'd been on TV on Channel 4 and she'd been on local TV, Kids TV as a presenter when she was younger. And we did that, and we showed Elfin Lee, which had to be slightly cut, but, you know, we had to show. And I didn't know who was watching it, because it just went out, you know, very obscure channel. And we were at a con, MCM, and we're selling stuff, and this girl comes up and says, oh, I'd like to buy Elfin Lee. And I'm like, okay. And she's dressed as Lucy, she's got the white shirt and the bandages and the blood. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, how old are you? And then her mum comes up and says, oh yeah, you know, I'll pay for it, how much is it? And I said, ma'am, I'm sorry to ask, but the disc is a 15. And she's like, don't worry, that's fine, I'll buy it for her. And I was like, you're buying it? She said, yeah, I'll buy it. Okay, that's legal. You know, I can't complain. There you go. And then the girl's like, yeah, no, I really love it. I told all my friends at school about Elfin Lee, and I watched it on TV. And I'm like, oh God, you're not 15, are you? and people, and you know, everyone on the ADV store just looked at me and said, it's your fault. And I've met people over the years who were in regions of the country who could watch Anime Network, and they said, that got me into anime, in the same way that there are older people who saw CX, what was the Cartoon Network spin-off?
It was
CX, which did anime, and before that Sci-Fi Channel, people saw it on there. And everybody had their moment, if they were lucky and had access to the right TV to see some anime, and that helped them start as a fan. But it was the first time I realised that I was doing what happened to me as a teenager, where at school we would watch movies on VHS at 15 and 18, even though we were 14. You know, one of the rites of passage for teenage like me and teenage friends of mine was going into the video store in Geneva with your family card for the club to pay for the video, and walking away with a video that was rated above your age. And then going home and watching it over pizza, and then like putting it away when your mum came in so she didn't know you rented whatever it was you rented. And that was a rite of passage, the video store club not asking you for your ID, you know, getting to that point where they don't ask you. I was like, yeah, all right, take it as an 18, whatever. And I realised I'd become the guy, you know, selling that. I was corrupting the youth. Sorry, Jim? No, I don't have a daughter too, but I am a godfather to your daughter, so be careful. So anyway, yes, I have corrupted the youth at some point, but no one's made a newspaper article out of it just yet, so I'm waiting for that to happen. So yeah, generally good with British press. All right, we need to finish up. Thank you very much, everybody. That was a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be going in. I hope I gave you some ideas, some thoughts, some information. I will be around for the rest of the day. I'm also the press officer for Kitacon, by the way, so anybody who's coming to Kita next year, I'll see you there. If not, you can find me the rest of the weekend in either the dealer's hall or out and about. Thank you very much.